With Tim Ream leaving Fulham for the MLS, we can officially say that his career is winding down. Which begs the question, when will he transition to coaching, and how soon can he become the US men's national team manager? This isn't clickbait, I promise. We're going to take a realistic look at when he could be ready for that job. Next, here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. Now, the answer is not going to be 2026. I promise I'm not being hyperbolistic here. I think Tim Ream would really make a great manager one day, assuming he wants to, and assuming he goes through the proper channels and gets trained and gets some experience. If he wants to be, he would be a fantastic manager, and with the very difficult search the United States is having to replace Greg Berhalter and the lack of good American coaches, it only seems natural to wonder if Tim Ream one day may have that job, and if so, when is it realistic to actually think he could take it? So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to break that down and see when it is realistic, but before we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get in that comment section. What do you think, and how do you think he should get there to the point where he's ready for this job? Get in that comment section and let me know your thoughts. You can also leave some comments and thoughts on Twitter at PitchsidePub, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com, where you can also sign up for our free newsletter. So Tim Ream, 36, nearing the end of his career, 9 great years at Fulham. It was up and down. Literally, the team was up and down. He wasn't always as successful, particularly at the beginning, as he was towards the end. He really did grow into a nice career there. And there's the somewhat famous quote where Pep Guardiola came up to him a couple years ago after Fulham and City played and said, if you were 24, you'd be on my team, which really sort of sums up the Tim Ream career arc with Fulham very well, in that he really became a smart player, really good, solid player towards the end of his career. As his physical skills were beginning to diminish, he got smarter and smarter and actually became a better player. And you always have that sort of what if he had been quite as smart when he was younger and quicker and more athletic. But, you know, such is sports and experience. As we age and we lose our physical skills, hopefully we gain some of the mental skills and experience to become a better player. And Tim Ream really did. And he had a great career at Fulham. He's a captain at Fulham. And Tim Ream is going to, he leaves England and comes back to the United States with one of the best European careers of any American player. I wouldn't say the best probably, but he's in that discussion. 9 years with one club, captain of an English team, brought them back from relegation. Really a good career there. And so now he's coming to FC Charlotte, and that really signals the end of his career. That's when good European players come to the MLS, is for the last few years of their career. And he's 36. There's no shame in this. This is what MLS is here for, and he'll be a big draw, and he'll be fun to watch there. And really for him, all eyes are on 2026 in the World Cup and just staying fit and staying in shape so he can still fight for a spot on that team. And even that is definitely up in the air. I don't know if at 38 at that point he will still be one of the best center back options. And if he is, what does that say about the United States and its development for other players, particularly at center back? So that remains a question as well. But the question I want to talk about is, when is he going to be ready to coach this team? And it's obviously not going to be in 2026, because even if he retired today, he'd only have a year and a half of coaching experience under his belt, and it's not like they'd give him the job leading, a week before the tournament. So obviously 2026 is out. The question is, how long would it take him to become really a qualified, capable coach, ready to take on that sort of magnitude of a job? The first variable is he has to want to, and I don't know how much interest he has expressed in coaching, because players, they're not really focused on that while they're playing. And even if he was asked, he'd say, I'm still in the middle of my career and blah, blah, blah. But now as it's winding down, I'll bet we start to get those questions. And even if he hasn't really thought about it or addressed it, it's a natural fit. He's a natural leader. He's, like I said, he's a captain. He's been a captain of a European team as an American player. That alone is a testament to leadership. Right? American players are not widely accepted overseas, particularly in England, and there's a stigma against them, and he overcame them and became a leader in that dressing room. And 9 years will do that, but so will strong play, so will smart play, and so will being a strong leader. So he does have a lot of the natural skills that you want from a manager, from a coach. So there is a natural fit there should he be interested. So let's just assume he has interest in coaching, and when he's done playing, I would imagine he plays at FC Charlotte from now until the World Cup in hopes of making that World Cup team, and the World Cup will be probably the end of his playing career, assuming he makes it, and if he doesn't, I'm sure it will be the end of his career. I doubt he's going to hang out in Charlotte until he's 40. So let's say that summer of 2026 is the end of his playing career. Could he be ready by 2030? That feels like a stretch. In 2030, he will be 42. That would have made him the youngest World Cup manager at the 2022 World Cup, where no manager was under the age of 44. So that doesn't necessarily rule him out, but it would put him as an outlier. So that's a strike against him. Additionally, if he retired in 2026, that's only 4 years of experience. And he does need to gain experience before we're going to give him this job, and good experience. And there's a couple different ways he can get it. We'll talk about what the best path for him would be in a minute. But 2030 feels like a stretch. That's only 6 years from now, the 2030 World Cup. It doesn't feel like he would be ready to be the men's national team manager coach at that point. An assistant, perhaps, if that's a route he wanted to go, but probably not ready to take the reins at that point. Again, because it's not like they would just hand him the reins a month before the World Cup. The MO of the United States is to have a manager in place, sort of for the cycle, a year and a half leading up to it, as they are right now looking for another manager. So he would have to get that job in 2028 when he's 40, right? So that's a stretch. That's a real stretch. So realistically, we are looking at the 2034 World Cup as the first time Tim Ream could be the manager on the world stage at a World Cup tournament, which would mean maybe he gets the job in 2032 in that cycle, sometime after the 2030 World Cup. So theoretically, he could get the job somewhere after the 2030 World Cup, leading up to, maybe in 2031, 2032, in that cycle. Whoever coaches them at the World Cup in 2030, let's say their contract expires afterwards, and U.S. Soccer goes through this whole search again. And this feels so unrealistic, right? It feels like we are just throwing darts here and taking wild guesses. And to a certain extent we are. But we do know certain things. We know U.S. Soccer likes to hire former U.S. men's national team players. Well, Tim Ream checks that box. He's been a national team member for a long time and is one of the one of the only true veteran players on this golden generation team, right? He has shown that veteran leadership in a clubhouse full of young kids. And so there is this is a real possibility, and this would be a very natural progression. I have no idea if it's going to happen, but there's a very natural progression that would lead Tim Ream to this job should he want it. And all we have to do is look back on previous U.S. men's national team managers and see when they had where their path came from, which all came from the team itself. So this is all very realistic. So for that to happen, he would need to get into coaching right away after the 2026 World Cup, and there's a couple different paths he could take. He could get right into the U.S. soccer bubble, right, umbrella, and work his way up there and start as a U18 or a U21 or coach the Olympic team, right, under whoever they end up hiring. And that is one way to go. And if his goal as a coach was just to get the U.S. men's national team job at some point, that would probably be the best way to do it, because you get into their little system, you get into the inner circle and into the sanctum there, and you work your way up, and you gain your experience on the international level, and there is something to be said for that. And if our goal was just to prep him for that one job, that might be the best way to do it too. But I would like to see Tim Ream go get more experience from more managers. Tim Ream played for a lot of managers in his career, and the list is not particularly wowing. It's not the most impressive list of managers. He has not played for most of the big-name managers. You look at a guy like Xabi Alonso and who he learned from, and he learned from some of the biggest managers in the world, some of the best managers in the world. Tim Ream did not. He did not play for, it's not exactly a who's who of managerial experience. So I would love to see him go learn under some of those really good coaches. If Jurgen Klopp were to get another job in a couple years, go learn under him. Go be an assistant for Pep or for Xabi Alonso or for Antonio Conte or Jose Mourinho or some of the biggest coaches in the world. Go learn from them. You don't have to emulate their style. Just learn from them. You can learn a lot by saying, I don't want to do it that way. But go be in their sort of systems. The Mikel Artetas and Roberto De Zerbi's, and there's a lot of good managers out there to go learn from. So I would recommend going and being either an assistant in Europe somewhere and then working his way up to a lower level head coaching job, maybe at the championship level, or maybe in Belgium or the Netherlands or one of the smaller countries in Europe, and then working his way up that way. We have American coaches in the Bundesliga who started as assistants and learned from some of the best, and that has worked out well for guys like Pellegrino Matarazzo, who was in the running for the current opening before it fizzled. And so there's a lot of different paths there, but I would recommend him going back to Europe and getting a lot of experience. Because we are, as the United States looks for their current manager, one of the things they seem to be prioritizing is a manager who has experience coaching in Europe, which doesn't necessarily translate to the international game, but we recognize that it's a higher level, and the fan base certainly would like someone who has experience in Europe rather than someone who's never coached out of the MLS. I genuinely hope Tim Ream does not go right from FC Charlotte to an MLS job, and if he does, it needs to be a stepping stone for a year or two until he can go over to Europe. Right? If he wanted to coach NYC FC to get in that Man City ownership group, system, and then maybe they slid him over to Girona, or maybe they slid him over to one of the other clubs, or maybe he's the assistant under whoever replaces Pep in a few years. A lot of different options and ways to go, but I hope he does not just fall into that MLS bubble and stay there, because that is not the level of experience we want for our United States men's national team, as we saw with Greg Berhalter, and now you see from the response when the job is linked with guys like Cherundolo from LAFC and others. We like someone with some experience in Europe, and it's not just that Europe is so much better. I like a manager who has experience from a lot of different managers. To only have experience, and this goes beyond football, this goes beyond sports. This is a business, this is a life sort of lesson, which is if all of your experience only comes from one way of doing things, then you're really pigeonholed, and you don't have a wide breadth of knowledge of how to do things. It's great to learn how to do things multiple different ways, and that's in life, that's in business, that's in sports, and particularly in football. There's so many different systems, so many different formations, so many different tactics and styles that you can learn. And like I said, Ream has played for a lot, so he does have a wide range of experience. I just don't know how good a lot of it has been. His most recent experience with Marco Silva might be one of the best examples he has, but I'd like to see him work for some bigger name coaches. So we've got, let's say, 10 years for that to happen. If we can sort of pinpoint the 2034 World Cup as Tim Ream's first big event, or the Gold Cups and the Nations Leagues leading up to it. But if we could say, he could get that job in 2031, 2032, then that gives him, if he retires in 26, that gives him 5 years to go get experience before getting the job. Is that enough? It feels like a bit of a stretch. It would be rushed. But again, this is a guy who is a captain, is a natural leader. If he got right into coaching from there, and got some really good experience in Europe as an assistant and then leading his own team, he would have to have head coaching experience. But if he had some success as a head coach on the smaller levels, maybe a Bundesliga squad, something like that, then I could see it. It does feel a little rushed, but if he's showing that prowess for coaching the way he did for on-field leadership, I'd be fine with it. If not, you're looking at 2038. He's 36 now. That's 14 years, so he'd be 50. That's certainly a possibility. He could have lots of experience by that time. So maybe sometime in the 2030s, Tim Ream becomes the manager of the United States men's national team, and I would love to see it. I would love to see it. We know they like to turn back to former players, and certainly more. He's probably the most qualified current American player, and even of the guys who have sort of graduated and retired from the team over the past decade or so. I think Tim Ream is among the most qualified candidates from the player pool that we've had to work with to eventually become the next manager. So that's how I could see it playing out. We can't be unrealistic and say, oh, he could go right into coaching and take over. That's ridiculous. 2030 would be a big stretch. But hey, maybe 2034, maybe 2038, we've got a Tim Ream-led United States men's national team heading to the World Cup, and maybe by then we'd be able to compete. I would love to get your thoughts on this. How realistic is this sort of plan I've laid out? Would you like to see Tim Ream coach? Is this even something we should be rooting for? Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. You can also leave comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. While you're at it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. And check out the website, pitchsidepub.com, where you can follow our free newsletter. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.